In this little exercise, we're going to look into the capability of transporting focus files from one system to another. So actually, if you're on a Windows machine and you're moving to another Windows machine, you're going to get quite safe. But in some circumstances, like let's say you're moving from an AIX Unix installation to a Linux machine running on a regular Intel architecture, those systems are quite different. So you might need to transport those files, but you have to rebuild them on the target platform. So in here, I got a very basic master file and a focus database. So we can look into that file as well on my system. So if we move over here, it's a quite generic, basic database for that sample in here. So if we go to my base up folder, so in here I got my database. So we can do some sample data in here. So actually here it's just some placeholder data. So nothing really special in the database here. So to be able to move it to a completely different platform, and actually in my sample I'm going to stay on Windows to show the process, but it's going to work the same if you move. So the first step is you have to unload that focus database into some format that can be transported. To do so, you just have to create a WebFOCUS procedure. So let me comment that one out. So we're going to go for the step that create the data. So we're going to go for that block in here. So looking at my data, I got an application called unload, which is in my application folder. So it's in here. So let me drop that data from here. So to unload that data in here, so you see here, I'm saying app hold unload. So actually what I'm doing now is I'm telling it where to put the unloaded file. I'm using the rebuild, reorg, dump command. So that one is the rebuild is the general tool. Reorg and the dump is going to work on the data to export it. That's the master file that I'm reading from. And that's the run command to execute it. So executed that one, you see it's going through the rebuild tool. That tool can be also used in a mode where you go through single steps in here, but here I got all the parameters. So what I did in here, so I told it I'm going to rebuild. That's the first step. I'm going to go for reorg and I'm going to go for the dump at the end. So I'm dumping that data in here. So I see here reorg phase dump. Then I selected the dump here to write the data out. It asks for a confirmation. So I could confirm it here if I want to do any where statement. So in here, if I select yes, I could also have a where statement, a filter in here only to unload partial data. So you see it's telling me I unloaded 100 records. So now I got that rebuild FTM file in here, which is the unloaded version of the data. So that FTM file can be moved from my Windows machine to another machine, like from AIX to Linux. So now switching minds, so that rebuild process in here wouldn't be done on the same machine. So to be able to do what you want, you would need to now take that rebuild file, take, of course, the master file, the original one, transport both to the target platform. And on the target platform, you can then load the data back into my database. So let me uncomment that one. So on the target database, I can now tell the system, hey, let me delete the focus file on the target system, because again, as mentioned, it's not going to be there on that system. So I only copied that master file and I copied the rebuild FTM file. So what I have to do now to rebuild the database is first one, to create file, which is going to create the physical focus database. So just running that one is just going to create the FOC file. And then the next step, the rebuild, is going to take that file from rebuild FTM and put it into this database. So I'm using the same file. So if I run that one now, As you see, it's going through the command structure in here again. So what it does the rebuild, which is the general function. In rebuild, it did the reorg, which is step 2 of that thing. Then it did load, which is the sub option 2 from in here. In here, I tell it then what's the name of the file, which is this file here. And then it starts to load that file into the target. So that Y here is just confirming that do you wish to continue. That just selects that or sets that one to be okay. So now if I move over, looking back to the folder structure again. So going back to my apps folder, going to base apps. So you see, it's recreated that Focus database. Again, I was running it on one machine. That doesn't make too much sense. But that rebuild command can be used to transport and convert databases between different type of hardware platforms, because Focus files are partially hardware dependent. So okay, so again, if we look into that rebuild command again for a second, so when we see that rebuild, so let's comment that one out, and we're just going to do rebuild with no additional commands in here. And again, I'm going to copy the code into the command. So you see in here, if I select the rebuild, that rebuild again is the main option. And rebuild has some sub functions. So rebuild can be used to optimize the database structure. It can be used to change the structure of the focus file. It could be used to re-index or change the index of the database. You can do some checking on the structure. You could also change the database timestamp, or you could update the database. Like there were old date formats from ages back in WebFOCUS or Focus that were only supported as the only date format in Focus database. So the date new is going to convert the old date format to the more modern date format, and all those kind of things. So rebuild is a general functionality to manage and optimize and your Focus databases on the system. So again, keep in mind, we build one sample here that just simply unloads and loads a Focus database, but you can do the same thing using those additional commands that I put in here. Again, I'm gonna put the full command structure here. I'm gonna put all of them into the commands of the video section. So feel free to pick them from there if you need to rebuild. If you need to rebuild a Focus database. Again, relatively straightforward structure here. And as well as just running a single thing, you could also loop through such a procedure. Like instead of just doing it one by one with a manual name of the file in here, you could easily just script a little Focus procedure that goes through a folder with a couple hundred files and does that process for all those files without any manual interaction. So that allows you to mass dump all your Focus files. And you could do the same thing on the target system, running through a loop that mass loads all your Focus databases, so you don't have to do 100 of manual interactions. That's it for now. Hope you like it.